With the big name head coaching candidates off the board, the Bruins' best move is embracing a fresh face behind the bench who can grow with this next era core. Let's rank the remaining candidates.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, May 16th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on today's podcast, we're updating the head coach search. Yesterday, I pretended I was a GM for the day and made a pitch for Trevor Zegras. On day two, arguably the bigger priority for the Bruins is finding a new head coach. There are several top candidates that have been scooped up by other teams. And so we are looking at the remaining candidates and assessing what the best approach is for the Boston Bruins. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. That's on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, even TikTok. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL at large for various outlets for 20 years now. So we're going to break up the remaining head coach candidates in terms of internal options, retreads, and my preferred group, the fresh faces. And this comes as some of the big names have been scooped up by other clubs. We had Mike Sullivan being targeted early by the New York Rangers after he was let go by the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Philadelphia Flyers got their man in signing Rick Tocchet to a 5-year, $26.25 million deal. The Rangers are paying $32.5 million for Sullivan, by the way. You also had Joel Quenneville, who was hired by the Anaheim Ducks. Some people saw him as a top candidate, not a guy that I was particularly keen on them hiring. The other top guy out there was David Carl, and he has made a decision to go back to the University of Denver. So where does this leave the Bruins? There are some internal possibilities. There are some retreads. There are some fresh faces. 11 candidates offered this morning by Fluto Shinzawa of The Athletic. I added in a 12th just for fun in terms of fresh faces, but let's look first at the internal candidates. Familiar faces already in the Bruins system who could offer continuity and structure. Of course, the obvious would be Joe Sacco. He is still the interim head coach. He's a veteran assistant. He's been an associate with the Bruins, known, of course, for checking defensive discipline. But based on what we saw from him over the course of the balance of this past regular season, he might lack the upside or vision for a new era of Bruins hockey in today's NHL. He does have head coaching experience, but way back in the day with the Colorado Avalanche, and that was before they kind of built around Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and others. He's still in the mix, though, as is Jay Leach, who recently returned to Boston after a few years as an assistant with the Seattle Kraken. He's trusted by Don Sweeney. He's respected by the players. And of course, he has past experience as Providence head coach and has touched the careers of some guys who are, core guys for the Boston Bruins right now. Your Swaymans, McAvoys, Pasternaks. There's a feeling that they may want to promote him to head coach so as not to lose him again to another club and perhaps permanently this time. But there's also an argument to be made that, hey, maybe we don't want to get too familiar and we'd rather go with someone, with some head coaching experience or someone from outside the organization to give, more of a outside perspective per se. Jay Leach is a great candidate. Don't get me wrong. I think of all the internal ones, he would probably be the best. He's not advanced in age. Let's say he's born in 1979. He has played 70 NHL games, spent the majority of his career in the AHL, but he does have that coaching experience with the Providence Bruins, and then also an assistant to Dave Haxtell for the Kraken's inaugural season, came back as an assistant in 2024. So Jay Leach is certainly a possibility. The other internal guy would be Ryan Mugano. He's got 4 seasons leading the Providence Bruins to great regular season success. He's gotten a lot out of guys like Georgi Merkulov, who are seemingly NHL ready. Matt Poitras, he helped develop other prospects as well. You can argue maybe he hasn't gotten the most out of Fabian Lysell down there. He's a bit of a low-profile option, but he's organizationally aligned. I made the argument recently, everydayers may remember when the Providence Bruins were bounced from the Calder Cup playoffs, and it was a decisive Game 5. They managed 8 shots on goal, were outshot 20-1 at one point. Yes, they were playing without Merkulov, their top scorer, but that's the kind of thing we've seen over and over again with regards to the Boston Bruins, and I'm not keen on replicating that at the NHL level. So when it comes to internal options, Leach, maybe. Let's be honest, he probably does deserve an opportunity to coach this team. He's has been an assistant to Mike Sullivan in the past, where it was thought that maybe he was going to be a top candidate for the Bruins. You get someone who's maybe Sullivan adjacent. He's had experience under Dave Haxtell, now under Jim Montgomery and Joe Sacco this past season. So of the internal candidates, he's probably the most exciting, but I don't think that's the way to go. I think the Bruins do need a fresh face. I think they need a fresh voice. I think they need someone from outside the organization who can come in and maybe give a more honest assessment of the roster, the prospects, and you know what? If you're in the organization for so long, you get so comfortable with guys and you start to see them for who you believe them to be and not who they actually are. And that's where fresh eyes can come in and say, no, maybe this guy isn't that. And maybe we need to shuffle things up a little bit. So that's what I would like to see. There are some experienced head coaches, retreads as I like to call them, and some true fresh faces. And we'll discuss those options here as the podcast continues. The Boston Celtics are still alive in the NBA playoffs, and hopefully there will be a Game 7 back at TD Garden. And if you've never been to a playoff basketball game, there's nothing like it. The energy, the rivalries, the nonstop action. And with Game Time, you can get in the building fast and affordably. Game Time has last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop the closer you get to tip-off, so you can score big without overpaying. I love that panoramic view, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the arena. And Game Time includes fees up front and backs every order with their ticket coverage guarantee, covering cancellations, job loss, even offering 24-hour returns. And speaking of planning ahead, NFL schedule release just dropped, and you better believe I'm already looking at my fall calendar and picking which games to hit. Game Time makes scoring NFL tickets just as easy. And if you've never used Game Time to grab NFL seats, now's the time. It's seriously a game day upgrade. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Game Time, last minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And we are going daily through the first week of free agency at the very least. So do subscribe if you have not already so that you never miss a thing. There's going to be a lot of Bruins news coming up in terms of the head coach, the draft, potential trades, free agent signings, etc. I may not record on Monday, what's it going to be, 19th. It's a holiday up here in Canada, but I will be back on Tuesday unless something big breaks, and I'll be sure to jump on. Today we're talking about the Bruins head coach search, discuss the internal candidates, who are the retreads that are believed to be on the radar for Don Sweeney. These are experienced bench bosses who might bring structure and stability, but come with a bit of baggage. And let's rank them here, all right? So there's Jeff Blashill, had a long tenure with Detroit, had an assistant role in Tampa, defense-focused, dependable. His ceiling, though, might be a bit limited. As head coach of the Red Wings, he was never really able to get them over the hump. You could argue that was a Steve Yzerman issue, who has not been as successful building the Red Wings as he was the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's a guy that does not excite me at all, although it would be cool to have a guy who looks like shockingly similar to Gru from Despicable Me behind the bench, but not something that I am particularly keen on. There's Peter Laviolette. He is a Stanley Cup winner and brings a ton of NHL experience with the Carolina Hurricanes, the New York Rangers. Most recently, he's known for turning teams around quickly, which is key for the Bruins here. As they missed the playoffs, they're looking to do more of a retool than a rebuild. And maybe Laviolette's the guy that comes in and pushes the right buttons right away for them. But similar to Tocchet, Sullivan, and because he is a Stanley Cup winner, one of the only available, he might be a bit too expensive. I think it was reported that one of the reasons the Bruins didn't pursue Tocchet as much as Philly is because Philly was willing to offer him that $5 million plus deal. The Bruins have the money to spend on a coach. So I don't know why they're being overly stingy. It's not like they're on the hook for Montgomery after they let him go because he was already scooped up. But might be too expensive. And again, he doesn't have the longest shelf life. He's coming off a season in which the Rangers went from President's Trophy champions to outside of the playoffs. So for the Bruins' current trajectory, like he's a guy that would come in perhaps and take a team like, I don't know, Toronto. They're not going to let go of Craig Berube, but that kind of team, like that's on the cusp and just need like some guy to come in and really grind the gears to get them over the hump. Not quite the same situation here in Boston. There's Jay Woodcroft. He's an excellent communicator and really developed and fed that lethal Oilers power play, which the Bruins, of course, need help with. He was fired early last season. The Oilers have gone to the Stanley Cup final since and are back in the Western Conference finals. Heights that they weren't able to achieve under Woodcroft. If the Bruins are intent on fixing special teams, he might be the guy. Not particularly strong defensively, of course. And, I mean, probably a B or C option for me at this point. A couple other retreads that are being bandied about, their names. You have Kirk Muller. He's a veteran assistant, former head coach in Carolina. He assistant coach of the Washington Capitals, who were dismissed from the playoffs last night by the Carolina Hurricanes. He has a lot of coaching experience. Head coach of the Hurricanes from 2011 to 2014, an assistant with the Canadiens from 2016 to 2021, and has most recently been with the Washington Capitals since 2023. Before that, he was an associate coach for the Flames under head coach Daryl Sutter. When it comes to Mueller, he's got that defense-first mentality, deep NHL bench experience, which Don Sweeney is looking for, but he doesn't necessarily scream innovation. I don't look at Kirk Mueller as a guy who's going to help this team evolve offensively, as Don Sweeney has stated is the priority. So again, decent option, but not someone that really excites me all that much. The other guy available as a retread is Greg Cronin. Finished 2 seasons as Ducks head coach with notable year 2 improvement. High energy, structure driven, and was recently fired because it was said he's possibly too intense for some situations. Which, yeah, it's perhaps something that the Bruins could use. It's perhaps something that would bring out something else in some of these young guys. But you look at his relationship with Trevor Zegras, who I discussed yesterday as a trade target. They really butted heads, and he did not get the best out of him. So that is kind of a red flag to me. I was just seeing this morning that on the 32 Thoughts podcast, the Bruins have interviewed apparently about 15 guys, according to Elliot Friedman. And among those, he did name Jay Leach, Joe Sacco, Jeff Blashill as guys who he believes they've talked to. There's also some fresher faces that are on the list. These are some guys that I would be more keen on, and we'll touch on them here as the podcast continues. All right, the fresh faces category here is where I would be focusing if I were Don Sweeney. I devoted a whole episode recently to Misha Donskov of the Dallas Stars, and I am adamant about him being the top candidate. He's a tactical, detail-oriented assistant with Dallas now, with Vegas prior. He won a cup with Bruce Cassidy. He has a long track record of helping build successful teams behind the scenes. Like, he was really responsible for building that Vegas team that went to the Stanley Cup final in their inaugural season. He was included on the Team Canada staff for the Four Nations face-off. And of course, Don Sweeney was general manager of that team. So there's a connection there. Go back and listen to that episode for a full detailed assessment of why I think Donskov is the guy. But there are some other options apart from him. Mitch Love is a name that's being bandied about. He's a 2-time AHL Coach of the Year. He's now assisting in Washington under Spencer Carberry, and we saw how they turned things around this past season. They were a playoff team last year, but decimated by the Rangers. Terrible goal differential, and they really reinvigorated the offense this season. Of course, Alex Ovechkin was a big part of that, but he's a guy who is high on a lot of people's lists. And Friedman did name Mitch Love as a guy that the Bruins have been pursuing and who they've already been in contact with. Again, these fresh faces are new school minds with upside, modern systems, player development focus, more suited for today's NHL and dealing with today's players. So there's Donskov, there's Mitch Love. Jeff Halpern is another guy who has emerged as a candidate. He's been an assistant with Tampa Bay since 2018, played a key role in their elite power play and cup winning culture. He doesn't have any head coaching experience yet, but Don Sweeney has said he's not necessarily looking for a head coach experienced guy, but someone who has NHL coaching experience, where Halpern certainly fits that bill. So he's on the same level as Love and Donskov. He's definitely seen as a future NHL head coach, often mentioned in coaching short lists league-wide. And he's a guy who certainly would be a very viable candidate for the Bruins. A couple other names that I have been high on for a while. 2 ex-Bruins. One in Marc Savard, former Bruin with a strong offensive mind. He's coached at the OHL level as a bench boss, assistant in Calgary, now in Toronto. He's well liked by players, could definitely help fix the power play. He is light on experience, but high on creativity and passion. If you've seen the clips from him behind the bench when the Leafs score, you see how he definitely brings that passion. Marco Sturm, also an ex-Bruin, respected AHL and international coach. He is a more defensive-minded guy who has honed his systems with the LA Kings and helped develop a bunch of guys there. A natural culture fit as well as an ex-Bruin. So I'd probably put Savard at the bottom of that list because of his limited experience. I'd put Donskov at the top, and then any one of Love, Halpern, Sturm would also be great additions in my mind because of their experience. Sturm doesn't have the NHL assistant experience, so that might put him down a bit. But any one of Halpern, Love, Donskov, Savard, Sturm, I'd be happy to have any one of those guys. At this point, the Bruins don't need a safe hire. They need the right hire. And recycling yesterday's systems with yesterday's voices won't unlock the full potential of players like David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, Jeremy Swayman, Matt Poitras, Casey Middlestat, whoever they bring in free agency, the 7th overall pick in this upcoming draft, maybe Fabian Lysell, Georgi Merkulov. It's time to break the cycle and embrace a new voice with fresh ideas, developmental instincts, and a modern approach to the game. Whether it's Love's AHL success, Sturm's structured style, Halpern's power play pedigree, or Marc Savard's offensive creativity, the Bruins have intriguing, forward-thinking options right in front of them. These are the kind of coaches who can grow with the next wave and not just management, but succeed with it. The Bruins don't need a retread. They don't have to settle with an internal option. What they need is a revival, and that starts with hiring someone who sees where the game is going, not just where it's been. And that someone, for me, remains Misha Donskov. He's flown under the radar, but his fingerprints are all over recent success stories. Vegas, Dallas, Team Canada. He brings structure, detail, a modern mindset without the ego or baggage of past head coaches. He's worked with winners, helping build cup contenders, understands the balance between accountability and development. If they want to build something sustainable, elevate their special teams, foster the next core, Donskov should be the fresh face they take a chance on. Having said that, I'd still be okay with a Love, a Halpern, a Sturm, a Savard, less satisfied with a retread and very underwhelmed by an internal option. We'll see if there's movement in this area over the weekend. Again, Friedman saying he's heard Boston has interviewed about 15 guys. They've talked to Sturm, Leach, Love, Halpern, Sacco, Blashill. maybe they're waiting for the Stars to get a real read on Donskov. The Stars lost last night to the Winnipeg Jets. That series is going to a game 6. Game 6 tonight between the Leafs and the Panthers. We really could have a Final Four made up of some prominent former Bruins. Say the Panthers win, you got Brad Marchand. Oilers are already there. Trent Frederick. The Hurricanes are in the conference finals. Taylor Hall. And Tyler Seguin could be there in the West if the Stars do end up winning. The Leafs come back and win. You got Brandon Carlo. A lot of former Bruins to keep an eye on. Of course, we're rooting for the Panthers so that the Bruins can get that first round pick down in the future. That's it for today's episode, my friends. A quick update on the head coaching search and ranking of who I would like them to see hire. Not big on internal hires, not big on the retreads. Please bring in a fresh face. That would be the most exciting hire for the Bruins. And again, it's something that Don Sweeney really needs to nail. He's got to hit on the head coach. He's got to hit on the draft pick. He's got to make the most of cap space in free agency, maybe make a trade or two in order to help this team turn things around quickly. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen again today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Local analysis on a national scale. You can find it on the Locked On NHL channel on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please take care of yourselves this weekend. Have a good long weekend if you're up here in Canada. And take care of each other as well. And thank you so much again for listening. Be sure to check out the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, your favorite team every single day.